what we're going to do is I'm going to introduce our panelists. I'm going to go through some questions that we have already kind of provided everybody, and then we'll open up the floor to any questions you might have. The goal here is we are all working on science, on technology to improve the lives of people who need them. And so what better way than to hear from people who have lived experience using neurostimulation devices, neuromodulation devices. So that's the spirit of this. Thank you to all our panelists for being here and their caregivers. We really appreciate it. So we have 5 panelists in total. One of them is remote, so we'll kind of switch over to Adam there when we finish introductions. All right. So we have kind of from my right farthest over to closest to me, we have Woody Brooks here, who is a user of the Cosmic and Case Western Reserve University Network Neuroprosthesis for just over 3 months, functionally for just over 2 months. So that's hand function and arm function, grasp, all right? Then next to Woody, we have Meg O'Keefe, who uses a device called Inspire for sleep apnea therapy. So that moves the tongue to clear the airway during sleep. So we'll hear about that. And Meg's been using that for 2 years now, right? And then next to Meg, we have Megan, who is using a neural array, the BlackRock neural array, 3 of them, 3 neural ports, 6 arrays in the motor cortex, motor planning cortex, and sensory cortex. And that's been 4 years now of use for hand and arm function, but also sensory stimulation as well, so feedback as well. And then we have Hanan, closest to me, Hamada, who is a user of the Case Western Reserve University implanted stimulator telemeter device for trunk function, quad function, glute function, and that's been 10 years. Yeah, 10 years. All right, so we're kind of going in order of duration of use, right? And then up on the screen, we have Adam Gorlitsky, who has been using the Vocare bladder management, bladder control system for bladder function, so continence, voiding for over 20 years. So kind of the broad range here, all right? So thank you to everybody for being here. We're just gonna, so everybody has their own microphones and, feel free to chime in, but I'll kind of go in order just to get us started. So the first question that I'd like, our panel to kind of let us know about is, what was the motivation in your daily life that caused you to start looking at neurostimulation options, right? So maybe we could start with Woody.
Okay. For me, just the general frustration of everyday life of not being able to do things for myself. I wanted to, my goal is to be as independent as I can and not have to depend on a caregiver, my wife, for everything. And so, just for me, the general frustration of doing things around the house myself was my main motivation for becoming a participant in the study with this device.
And Meg, what about your experience?
I was diagnosed with sleep apnea and used the mask for about a year and a half, but mostly unused because it was often lying next to me in the middle of the night and I didn't know when I had taken it off, or there were constant gas leaks. I also have a very small head, so it would slip off very easily. So I was very frustrated with a year and a half of still not getting adequate sleep, and it was suggested to me by my pulmonologist.
And Austin, about yourself?
Yeah, I think Woody hit on a lot of great points as far as wanting to be as self-independent as you can after accident. And I think for me, when I got hurt, I was 22. I tried as much, rehab as I could to recover, hopefully as much as I could coming back. And when, not a lot came back other than, the shoulder movement, I just really felt like I was in a good place to kind of give my body to like science. I was young, was very healthy. I didn't have any underlying conditions. And when I saw that, Case Western was doing a big study on high-level quadriplegics and using, your brain to hopefully restore function and feeling in, just one of your limbs. I mean, how do you not get excited and hopefully, be a part of something that, has a small impact on you, but hopefully a major impact, on people down the road.
And thank you for doing that, all of you. Hanan, how about yourself?
For me, it was really a coincidence. I had my injury in 2012 due to a car accident, and my level of injury was pretty high at T3, T4. So really, I was never able to sit up in a wheelchair. I always felt like someone was pushing me forward and I was gonna fall forward. And the pain was just excruciating. It felt like I had 50-pound sandbag in my shoulder all the time. And to keep my shoulders up, lifting that weight, it was impossible more than 5 minutes. So I literally stayed home for 2.5 years unless I had a doctor's appointment. I was not going to family functions because the pain was so bad that I was always in a bad mood due to the pain. And it was just a coincidence. This kid approached me I was at my doctor's office and he was in a wheelchair and asked me if I knew about this gym that existed for people with spinal cord injury. And at that time, I really didn't go anywhere. And I thought, why not just give them a call and see what it's about. And it was the best thing I could have done because the owner was a quadriplegic. He was a veteran. And when I met with him, I was going just to see what kind of workouts they did since I did work out prior to my injury. And he's the one who introduced me he gave me the information about the VA lab for the FES stimulation. And I called and they told me that if my muscles responded and I could be, a subject to get the trunk system. And I had no idea how it would change my life. At that point, I didn't have nothing to lose because like they said, I wanted to be independent. I always was independent. So to just sit home, it was not an option for me. And it was the best thing I could have done and the best team I could work with at the FES Center.
Thanks for sharing it. Adam, how about yourself with the Vocare system?
So I was in a car accident. So I'm 38 years old when I was 19 years old, so almost exactly 19 years ago. I was in a car accident, broke my back, suffered a complete T9 spinal cord injury. And I got my Vocare implant a year and a half post-accident and being injured with a spinal cord injury. And the reason I got it is because obviously of bladder control. For whatever reason, I have a tiny, I wouldn't say a tiny bladder, but for whatever reason, my bladder would spasm at about 150 cc's of urine, which isn't very much. Is everyone in the audience, are you guys spinal cord related? Like, I don't even know much about, like.
Not necessarily. So any additional information would be valuable, yeah.
Okay, all right, so I'll just pretend like everybody's like in third grade then. Just kind of,
Perfect.
yeah, yeah. So if I overly explain something, I'm not trying to offend anybody. Yeah, so my bladder, for whatever reason, would spasm at 150 cc's, which isn't many cc's of urine in your bladder. So I found myself going through numerous pairs of pants and shorts per day. As like I'm sure many people with spinal cord injury, well, I know this. A lot of people with spinal cord injury, that's a big problem, right? And not only that, so to combat that, I was using condom catheters, and just anything to kind of make my bladder not spasm. So what happened? So long story short, I went through catheterization. I got a kidney infection, a very bad kidney infection, and I was in the hospital for about 3 or 4 days. And my doctor, my urologist said, hey, your bladder, it spasms with hardly any urine in it. What we could do is this surgery where we enlarge your bladder. We take part of your intestine and increase your bladder size. And then my urologist said, look, you'll still have the bladder spasms, but your bladder probably won't spasm until it reaches 400 cc's. So I kind of freaked out because, it's a big surgery and I'm still going to have bladder spasms and I'm still not going to be able to avoid bladder or, void urine on my own. So then now this is, 17 years ago. So then my mom went on the internet and saw that MetroHealth was doing this Vocare implant surgery. And so I guess long story short, I was looking for something to help me with the bladder spasms and something that could allow me to void urine on my own. So it took a rock bottom moment, like a kidney infection and ending up in the hospital for 3 or 4 days to kind of be the catalyst that drove me there. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, that's definitely kind of the theme is people are not satisfied with the status quo here. So maybe we could just go through and understand a little bit, how did you find out about the device and what is the device that you use in particular? So Woody, go ahead.
Okay, so my device is for restoring hand function. Right now it's just in my left hand. It gives me different grasp patterns to give me the ability to perform different tasks. So I can choose on my phone which grasp pattern I need for whatever task I'm looking to accomplish. How I found out about this study was I was already consulting with some doctors regarding nerve and tendon transfer procedures that would hopefully restore some hand function for me. I came across the study on a website, SCI Trials, and saw that the study was actually being done at MetroHealth and the doctors I was already consulting for the other surgeries that I was possibly going to have was involved in the study. So for me, it was, the next step was just talking to the Dr. Keith, the physician that I spoke with initially about nerve and tendon transfers. Told him that I had, seen that this study was going on. He was involved with it. Just discussion with him about whether or not I would be a good candidate for it. And, after a lengthy discussion with him about how the study worked, what the device was, the history of it, the success they were having with it. I decided that, it sounded like I was a good fit for it, and it was a good fit for me. So that was ultimately what led me to the study and getting involved.
Great, thank you. And Meg, maybe you could tell everybody your device. It's been more in the advertisements lately, but just kind of let everybody know how it works and what it is.
Well, after trying multiple masks, that's when my pulmonologist suggested, he mentioned it, and I wasn't really aware of it. We don't have a TV. We don't use a TV, so I wasn't really aware of the commercials. But as soon as he mentioned it, it seemed like I kept running into a nurse who had the Inspire, and then a friend who actually does Inspire sales, and I was ready to try it. I just needed to sleep. It wasn't just lack of sleep, but it was kind of a fear from 40 years ago when I started experiencing seizures only during sleep. And so some of the symptoms I would feel is a jerking as I was falling to asleep, and it was really cranking up my fear levels about, the symptoms I was having. So I was ready.
And how does your device work typically? How do you use
Well,
it?
typically it's a remote. And so as I'm about to go to sleep, I turn it on. You can set a delay. So if I fall asleep quickly, I can set it for 20 minutes, or I can set it for an hour if I want to have an hour to fall asleep. And then if I wake up, I pause it. Because partly if you're going to take a sip of water in the middle of the night and it's on, you choke a little bit. It doesn't go down very easily. So usually I'll pause it and then adjust, or, because when I feel the pulse in my throat, it's a little hard to go back to sleep. So I want to put it on pause until I fall back asleep again and turn it off in the morning.
Great, thank you. And Austin?
Yeah, so I heard about, I'm sorry, let me go back. So again, I tried doing rehab to hopefully restore or see what would recover naturally. And at that time when, again, motor-wise, nothing really came back, I had an occupational therapist at Ohio State who always did FES stimulation, like on the surface. So he put it on my arms, and he always was amazed how well responses I got for how high of a level of an injury I had. And so he was the one that actually brought up the FES Center, and he said, hey, they do great work. It might not, be something like in your arm. It could be like what Adam has, bladder, but something that could improve your quality of life because of how well you get a response. And so I think after that is when I went to the internet, looked them up, saw that they were doing, a brain computer interface type of study. And so I kind of, reached out to them. And once, we set that up, I kind of had to slowly get my parents on board. So I didn't start with the fact that it's brain surgery. I kind of hid that for a little while and just kind of said, hey, I want to do this study and I think I'd be a good candidate. So let's go look into it. And so, I basically did what a lot of people, I think, through news and media, is like a Neuralink type project. Basically, BlackRock, put these arrays in my brain, and 2 of them go to my motor, 1 goes to my sensory. And so when I'm hooked up to the computer, and I think to open and close my right hand, it's incredible. It's like going back and, it's not the biggest movement, but it's just a simple opening and closing your hand or bringing your hand up to your mouth. And through the study, we've been able to incorporate like reaching out and grabbing something and bringing it up to you, feeding yourself or getting a drink, or, I've got to set my dog on my lap and just brush my arm against him. And something like that, you can't put it into words what it means, and to include a sensory side so that when I touch something, they can send a stimulation to your brain, and it's as if you're being touched on your fingertips. And it's an incredible feeling that, I don't know, it's just remarkable how just a little bit can go to your brain and feel like a natural touch on your fingertips.
Thank you. And Hanan, you mentioned briefly how you found out about it, but maybe you could go into what your device is, how you use it.
So, yeah, as I said, I met the veteran who introduced me to the FE at Lisa Lombardo, which is a research PT who did my original evaluation. And when they do that, they do a surface stimulation. And like I said, I was never able to sit up straight. And the minute they turned it on, it was night and day for me. I was going to sign up for, I don't care about I didn't care what could happen, what could go wrong, or I was ready to sign up for it. And like I said, it's, to be able to sit up straight is not just sitting up straight, it's everything from brushing your teeth. You can't, without the stimulation, without this implant, I will not be able to hold my hands up at all. So prior to that, I would always have to keep my elbow in my wheelchair or hold on to something. So I could never grab something with both my hands, open the cabinet, open the fridge and grab something. It was just, I can't grab something with one hand. And besides sitting up straight, and on top of that, the pain that it alleviated was just unbelievable. So I went from being bedbound, not being able to go anywhere, to having this implant that literally helped me. And I mean, I can give you a brief. So this is the implant that controls this is the box that controls the implant. And it works with batteries. So I have 5 batteries that I always keep. So without it, now it's turned off, I can't, this is how I would be sitting, but I think my chair is tilted a little bit, so that helps. But I would never let go of both my arms if I don't have it on. So I will turn it on and you will see how so that's I don't think anybody can understand until you're in my position, but just to be able, and it literally feels like having a bustier, or a corset that's so tight, which is even driving, it's really helpful for me, because one time the coil came off and I literally leaned to the side and I'm just pulling in the steering wheel, which is, when things happen, that's when you realize the importance of sitting up straight. Also transferring to I have a standing frame that helps me stand up to help with my bone density, and a bike, a new step that I work out in. So I also have a, where I could just turn out just the quads by themselves, and it would literally activate the quad muscles and I don't have to do anything. And also the glutes, I use that when I'm sitting in a new step. And another amazing thing that I keep finding out, every time I go for bone density every 2 years, and my test results come back as a normal able-bodied person, which my doctor is amazed at that, because she rarely see that for spinal cord injury female patient. So it just had way much more than just being able to sit up straight. I mean, the positive of it, and the group of people that I work with they're the people I trust the most as far as handling my transfer, or they really, really are amazing.
Thank you for the demonstration, very clear. And then Adam, you mentioned how you found out about the device, but how do you typically operate your Vocare system?
Yeah. So my implant, my Vocare implant, is, I want to say it's about 3 inches from my belly button on the left-hand side of my body. I wish I could show you guys. If I was in person, I would definitely be able to. But yeah, so the implants kind of wraps around my, it's the head of the implant is just underneath my skin, about 3 inches from my belly button. And it wraps around my stomach, and I guess it, hooks onto those sacral nerves. And then to operate the implant, I have, so this right here is my bag that I keep my external device in. So when I want to use or go to the bathroom, yeah, this right here is my external device. Can everybody see this?
Yep.
Everybody's,
Thank you.
yeah, so this right here is the external device. I put this head over my implant, and my device has 3 settings, 1, 2, and 3. 1 is to void urine. 2 is to void urine, but also helps to bring down fecal matter into the rectum. And then number 3 is sexual function. So this device helps regain full bladder control. It doesn't. I wouldn't say it doesn't void fecal matter. Going like number 2, going to the bathroom, but it helps bring it down. But it helps with my bowel program. Probably cuts the time down in half, and then helps bring back sexual function for me. So, yeah, I mean it's a pretty amazing piece of technology. It's totally changed my entire life.
Great. And so just so it's clear, everybody here has an implanted device. So that's why some of the discussions about, parts of the body in contact with an external controller. And so with that in mind, there was a surgery as part of all these devices. So let's talk a little bit about that. Like, what were your concerns, any recovery issues, setbacks with these surgeries? So maybe we could just kind of start with Woody again about that.
Okay. So, yeah, I guess most of my concerns about having the surgery were just the immediate recovery period. I had met with the doctors and the team multiple times prior to having my procedure done, so I had the utmost faith that I was in good hands there. The actual surgery didn't concern me, but I knew that I was going to be. I have implanted device. It's in my abdomen, and then I have multiple sensors in the upper chest area, upper arm, and then all the leads and sensors that come down to the hand. So I was going to be casted for a week after my procedure, and then essentially a removable cast for another couple of weeks after that. So my biggest concerns was how I was going to function being down in a whole arm for that period of time. I was pretty independent with doing my own transfers and stuff prior, but being down an arm and then also being limited with what I can do with my other arm, that meant I was going to be dependent on my wife, who's my primary caregiver, to do a lot more for me during that time period. And then also how we were going to accomplish transfers, whatever activities while I was casted and not cause any further damage to either, my body or any of the components that were implanted. So that was probably our biggest concerns. And luckily we had enough help from therapists who became friends during all my rehab periods that helped us to kind of workshop things, how to do transfers, how to accomplish stuff. And then just my wife and I are a pretty good team already as far as we can just figure stuff out. So she tends to be the person between the two of us that gives stuff more thought ahead of time than I do. I'm just more the type that we'll just figure it out when it comes up. But she actually was the one that would, think about, okay, you're going to be down in arm. How are we going to do this without affecting any of your incisions, any of that stuff? So we had enough time prior to my having the surgery to think about those things and actually, work with a couple therapists and, how to do the transfers. And but I still was, even with the thinking, the amount of time we had to think about stuff ahead of time, there was still stuff that came up that we didn't anticipate. I definitely was dependent on her for things that normally I wouldn't have been. Just something as simple as brushing my teeth. She had to help me with turning the toothbrush on, getting it into my mouth, getting the toothpaste on, the brushes, and and then stand there, because with only having one arm to be able to use, I couldn't turn it off. So so most of my concerns about having the procedure was not related really to the surgery itself, but just my recovery period while I was going to be even limited more than what I already am.
Thanks. And Meg, how about you?
Mine was a much easier surgery. And I had had a major surgery the year before, so it seemed pretty easy and straightforward for me. My main concern with the Inspire implant was whether it would interfere with certain medical tests like MRIs, and I was assured that would be okay, though it does make the MRI tech kind of nervous. So you bring your remote and show them that the batteries aren't there and that it's turned off. And I was concerned about going through airport security, and it's never been an issue with that. So there really wasn't too much concern on my end. It was all pretty positive. I think I took 3 days off work over and a weekend, so about 5 days. Probably was a little bit of a rush because I had very sharp right ear pain afterwards, and I went to Express Care thinking I had an ear infection, and it wasn't. After talking to the surgeon, he just hadn't told me that. Well, I talk a lot for work, so that the more I talked, the more pain there was, but it resolved on its own.
Very interesting. And Austin, how about you? What do you think about the procedures?
Yeah, so again, I think for me, it was always pretty simple. I knew that I was going to do these surgeries. And so my concern was never really, about the brain surgery. I mean, I think that's scary to hear, but I always thought, like I brought up about my accident, how healthy, and again, no other issues with my body, and I had great reaction to this FES, that I always felt that I was kind of led, or, something, was leading me to this point to do something like this, to be a great, vessel for science, and, let smarter people with knowledge in this hopefully come up with a way to help those in the future. And so it was more, the concern, I think, for my family, like my parents. I think I knew the fear that they were having, going into it. Both my surgeries, the one in my arm had to do with putting these little nerve cuff electrodes around the nerve so I could, use my right hand and arm when I'm under control. And, that surgery in itself took 16 hours. And I think, my parents, the toll of me being in surgery for 16 hours and then seeing me, hurt afterwards or recovering in that process. And then to go a month later right into your brain and you're going to open that up and put 3 chips in it. And, again, I could always see more my parents and the family, struggle or, being torn about seeing me go through pain. But ultimately, I knew they were behind me in this journey and endeavor. But that was always my biggest, concern in all this was, because naturally I was going to be hurt and a little bit worse shape than when I started, and seeing my parents probably have to see me go through that was like the biggest thing.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you for that perspective. And Anand, did you have any concerns?
I really didn't know what I was getting into, so I had no concerns at all. As far as the surgery goes, I mean, I worked with the people in the lab, so I was really comfortable with them and I trusted them wholeheartedly. And like I said, the minute I felt when they did the surface stimulation, I was in 1000%. I didn't care what would be the outcome as long as I can sit up. Now, post my injury, I had to be very careful, of course, because it was 6 to 8 weeks recovery. I had to be careful how I move so the wires don't detach from the muscles. And of course, the surgery took 11 to 12 hours. So I definitely was not going to jeopardize or do anything silly or move quick because I'm very impatient. So I had to really always be very mindful of how to transfer, and I had help. And like he said, the worst part is watching your parents being so concerned because they don't understand spinal cord injury. They're just worried, and you're worried about them or just trying to be more upbeat and more positive so they feel completely okay with it. But all in all, I think I have the best team that I still trust to this day, and I'm very, very lucky.
Thank you. And Adam, how about your unique implant?
Yeah, so my implant with the Vocare, it actually at the time, I don't think they're trying to avoid doing this going forward, what I'm about to say. But it involved a rhizotomy. So it involved, I guess, for any spinal cord or neurologist in the room, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but a rhizotomy is essentially, in my case, was they snipped one of my sacral nerves to make my bladder flaccid. So I guess my one trepidation was I guess it was to kind of wrap my head around because what that means is I'm making my bladder flaccid helps with the incontinence problem. So once they did that, my bladder never spasmed or hasn't spasmed since. So I guess my thing is it was trying to wrap my head around. All right, I need to further damage my spinal cord for improved quality of life, right? That's kind of what that means. So that was the first trepidation, and then once I wrapped my head around that, it was fine. And I guess like the second thing that caused me a little bit of pause was, there just wasn't many people in the United States that had this. It was obviously somewhat experimental still. But I think I was so young at the time. I was 20 years old when I got the surgery done. And I kind of figured, all right, if there is a cure, a quote unquote cure for spinal cord injury, how old will I be when that happens? And at the time I was like, all right, maybe I'll be 60 years old. Well, that's 40 years of, constantly peeing myself. And, that's just not a very good quality of life, obviously. So once I kind of rationalized in my head, about the rhizotomy, and then the quality of life the improvement of my quality of life after I got this surgery, it was kind of a no-brainer for me. Yeah, so I think, yeah, I would just say, yeah, both of those things. The fact that it was very experimental and that rhizotomy. But yeah, I'm like, it is literally the best thing that I've ever done since becoming paralyzed. It's almost like life or death for me, being able to control my bladder on my own. And not only control my bladder, or to avoid urine, but also to hold it as well too. So yeah, I hope that answered the question. I don't know.
Yeah, thank you for walking us through your thought process on that. So now that, we kind of talked about the procedure, maybe you could comment on, each of you could comment on the impacts, both positive and negative, now that, you're starting to use it or when you started to use it and as you've been using the device. So Woody, go ahead.
Okay. I'm pretty early into this. I'm only 3 months out from my surgery of having the device implanted, and like a little over 2 months of having it actually be functional. So I'm still in that stage of experimenting with how I can use it at home, what I can do with it, how it's going to help me do things. I had an appointment recently with the research team where we made some tweaks to my initial grasp that they had programmed, and we added a couple more. Since that appointment, I've already experienced where I'm able to accomplish things easier. I initially was having some struggles with a couple of the grasp patterns not working quite as well as I had hoped, but we've made the changes necessary. So I am finding that already that what had initially led me to searching out something to help me with my hand function, my frustrations in my everyday life of not being able to accomplish things myself is already lessening. I'm finding, things that I was struggling with and becoming very frustrated with, not being able to accomplish, or how long it took me to accomplish, are already becoming easier for me to do with this device. As far as negative impacts, it's taken me some getting used to the extra steps it takes me to do things with the device. Instead of it's just naturally being able to reach out, grab something to pick the item up. It's the getting used to the extra step. I have to go to the phone, open it up, select the grasp pattern that I think is going to work best for that task. So just learning how to integrate that, getting used to that, the extra steps, realizing the value in it, because I'd already figured out prior to having the device how to accomplish certain tasks with my limited hand function, but now learning the value of it's not so bad that I have to take an extra step or two to accomplish the task, considering the amount of frustration that it saves me in doing so. And then just also the extra time I have to charge my device every day. It's about an hour to an hour and a half on average. So just the impact of figuring out where I fit that into my day is, they're minor negatives, but if there were any negatives, I'd say those were probably the two biggest. Is just the extra time of charging and just learning the value of having to take extra steps to do something for the benefit of being less frustrated, trying to do it.
Thank you for sharing that. And Meg, you mentioned some of the impacts already. Any additional thoughts on that, or unmet expectations, things like that?
I never need a nap. And I was always in need of a nap on the weekends before I got this. So that's a huge thing. As I said, fear and anxiety about just falling asleep and whether I might have a seizure, that's over. My main symptoms were headaches and tightness of the chest, shallow breathing, unable to get a deep breath, and those are all gone except for very occasionally. They really didn't see any improvement using Inspire during my sleep study when I'm on my back. I was really bummed out about that I had less options there. So it's only right or left, but occasionally I do end up on my back and I will wake up with the headache. So I was a little bummed out that I'm limited because, of course, you get more hip pain as you age, and sometimes you don't want to be on a hip. I think, let's see, it's just been overall a positive experience. You have to change the battery in your remote once a year, I've found, and every 10 years you have to go back in and get a battery replacement. Negatives just started this week, interestingly enough. So in the last 8 days, I woke up 3 times. Last night, 2 nights ago, was the last time, with extreme pain and itching right over the site, right here. And so I got up and used a cortisol cream and it went away. And interestingly enough, my annual pulmonary visit is in 2 days. So we'll talk about that. And very occasionally, a very sharp, sudden pain. And it's not, I was really grateful. It doesn't seem to be electrical. I was always a little nervous about that, but it's some kind of sharp pain just happened at lunch hour today, and then it's gone. So those are the only 2 problems I've had, and we'll see what it is. I did see, I actually looked it up on PubMed. There is a case study of a person who had that severe itching, and it did resolve it by itself. So I don't know.
I would hope it resolves quickly for you too. Austin, what about you?
Yeah, for sure. As far as impacts, I think a lot of you guys, know in like this research field, you get to be close with the people you work with. So the benefit I got in my life, not only just the opportunity to move again, but the fact that, for 4 years now, I've worked with, these researchers are really now my coworkers, and, a lot of them now my friends. And what's nice about it is, it gives you back that, sense of purpose, that drive of, it's kind of like my job. This is what I, consider my job for the last 4 years. And, I think my parents can kind of see when I'm, back home and I'm itching to go back, just because, I feel like we're all in it for the right reasons, to push it, to see what can happen. And of course, the opportunity to be plugged in and think of opening and closing my right hand or reaching out and getting to shake my parents' hands and, basically say thank you for taking care of me. Like, those things I'll always remember and cherish from this study. But it's also the, like I said, the teamwork of knowing you're right here now, but what this project eventually could be incredible. And so that has been an extremely impactful and positive thing. As far as negatives or, side effects or whatnot, I mean, now I have, I call them my horns that stick out of my head, my little pedestals, which is what they connect to. And so those are drilled like into the skull. And so if I bump into them, as you can imagine, it's not pleasant. And so I got to, watch out for things like that. But, the side effects are things like that you put up with gladly. to be a part of something like this. And it's something that, yeah, you don't even, think about or try to get down about because of, I guess, what I talked about as far as the positive sides of it.
Thank you. And Anand, you showed us very convincingly, the benefits. Any concerns or other impacts you want to talk about?
Well, like he stated, like the group of people that you work with definitely become like family, more than friends. I mean, they know the most personal things about the whole procedure with what this does and how it helps. I really don't have any negative. The only negative I can think of is, and for me, I live in Cleveland. I'm like 8 minutes away from the lab. If I break the box, I drop it. Or if the coil, which is the wire that connects, that I put right on top of my implant and I tape it with a tape. Sometimes the wires can come up, but it rarely happens. And I freak out the second I turn the box and it doesn't function properly. It's like PTSD, like instantly I go back to that mode where, oh my God, what if they're not there? My main concern was, what if you guys retire or leave this lab or this lab decide to move? I always think of that because this is so important. I don't mean to be drastic. I don't think it's a way to live when you're not independent and you can do whatever you want whenever you want to do it, because it's bad enough we have people that are there to help. Like, I appreciate my aides so much, but you definitely lose your privacy. You lose so many things, but the pros outweighs the cons for sure. So I'm very, very grateful. I mean, my surgeon, last January, I was at the gym and I take 5-hour energy drink and I feel like Superwoman. And I was overdoing it. And I think I broke my implant. And that was a really bad thing because when I went, it wasn't overall, it ended up being a good thing because because I was having the same problems with incontinence. So I was always I can only be out for 4 hours, no more than that, because I knew I would have an accident. And so I wouldn't drink any liquids at all, which is bad. I didn't know that there was a Botox injection that you can get in your bladder that can allow you to hold more urine in your bladder until probably 6 years later. But by then I already had the surgery for the implant. So I couldn't have this procedure where I could cath from my belly button. It's called the MetroHealth. So when it broke, I kind of thought about the procedure that I wanted to have 6 years ago. So I asked the surgeon if we can wait until I asked the urologist if this could happen. And he gave me the green light. So I ended up having that procedure, which now I can go. I just drove to Florida last week and I came back. So I was able to cath from my belly button, which before I would have to attach this bag, and it's the worst. Like, having urine problems and accidents, just something that you even want to do, and to take a chance to even leave you don't think of what. Prior to my accident, when I saw someone in a wheelchair, the extent of helping was just open a door. So my question was always like, how did these engineers chose to do this from school, like not knowing what they're doing? I mean, I don't really think they even understand how much this help us. I think it's commendable and I'm very grateful. And like I said, the only cons is when my coil doesn't work, and that's really, really nothing, which I can call the lab and it's never a day wait. It's always come right now and we'll give you a replacement. So problem solved.
Thank you for sharing those additional challenges. Very insightful. And Adam, how about yourself? Any sort of unmet expectations or additional impacts that you think of?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the pros, the positives of this implant, obviously there's no, I haven't used a catheter, I guess in about 17 years. I catheterized myself, I guess it was a year after I got the implant, just to make sure everything was fully being drained properly, like my bladder. But yeah, I really haven't used a catheter, about 16, 17 years. So no, I haven't had one UTI. I haven't had any kidney infections. I guess the other pro is, and I think people don't really, this is something that people maybe don't talk about as much, but it's definitely on everybody's mind that becomes paralyzed. I think what it helps out is relationships. I'm a single guy. I was 19 years old when I got paralyzed. I'm 38 now, but I still, I'm a single guy. I want to settle down. I want to eventually get married. It does make dating a lot easier when you have bladder control. And when you can have sex, obviously. So that's the thing I think, when I talk to people about this, about the Vocare, that's like the relationship aspect is actually what people like, who are paralyzed, like you kind of see the light bulb go off in their head. They're like, oh my God, like you're so right about that. So I think, obviously my physical quality of life, not having UTIs, kidney infections, able to control my bladder, but just the relationship element is hugely important. And then in terms of the negatives, it's kind of like I think Hanid, is that your name? Is that?
Yep.
It's kind of like how you said, like, what happens if the company that makes this thing goes out of business? Or, I mean, you didn't say that directly, but you kind of did. I'm always scared of, like, this is a third-party prosthetic that I'm essentially relying on. And these companies, these neuromodulation companies, they're not like, it's not like Neuralink. Neuralink has Elon Musk and his $300 billion backing it. It's never going to go out of business, probably. Well, the Vocare, the company that makes my Vocares, they're called FineTech. Very small company. Their staff is always turning over. They're based I believe, out of London. So I'm always scared that they're going to go out of business, and they actually kind of did go out of business. Thankfully, some bigger company bought them. But now, like, it's such a non-profitable company that the company that bought the Vocare, this Vocare, now is not doing any more new implants. So it's a little scary knowing that. So yeah, I guess like that, that long term, that's kind of gives me a little anxiety because, every now and then my external device will break. It has broken before. If I accidentally leave it out in the rain, let's say, it's like you need somebody to fix. You need like a real company backing this and putting a lot of resources into it. So that's the one thing that like the main concern that I have with my Vocare implant is what happens if the company goes out of business, and what happens if everybody at MetroHealth, the people working at MetroHealth Hospital, as Haneen said, what if they no longer existed? I'm kind of screwed if anything goes wrong.
Yeah, that really segues to our final question here, which is, there's about 90 scientists here, PhD students, researchers, clinicians. And so what would your charge be to them? What would your encouragement be to them as they're continuing their work? So Woody, go ahead.
For myself and my situation in particular, First I'd want to say I'm deeply appreciative of anybody that's involved in the research of creating these implants, these neuroprosthetics, neuromodulation devices that benefit people in all of our situations. The benefit we get from the research that is being done does impact us in our daily lives and our quality of lives. So I guess my charge would be to just continue in what you're doing, continue to advance the technologies, inspire, teach students, other people to get involved in the research. Specifically, things like just advancing the technology behind the devices as far as, making it more, like the devices more natural, to be able to implement them more naturally into our daily lives. Improving the technologies, battery life, battery size, all this common sense things that you guys are already aware of that, can be improved upon. Just continue working on those things to make the devices more practical for us that depend on them and use them in our daily lives.
Yeah, definitely. And any goals you would impart upon the next generation, Meg?
For myself in particular, I guess just any furthering the application of FES to restore function for people who are paralyzed. I'm speaking to my condition specifically, being a quadriplegic. Any application of FES that can improve, restore more function for me, for quadriplegics, for paraplegics, anybody paralyzed. I guess specifically, listen to the people in our positions that, what our concerns are and what we feel we're going to get the most benefit from. Don't just assume that, maybe a project that you're thinking about working on or what you are working on is what's most important and what's going to benefit us most. Listen to the people that are affected by various disabilities and what's important to us. What we would like to see, what we would like to, what functions we would like to see restored. I think there's a good representation on this panel of, various disabilities that are being benefited by this technology. I personally am pretty much affected in every way that other people on this panel are, could benefit from having those functions restored.
Thank you. And Meg, how about yourself?
The thing I wanted to say that I forgot to say was the improvement in quality of life involved just, again, having blood pressures of 170 over 100, and my primary care doctor, when she heard I was about to have the surgery, cut the dosage in half. She was very heads up. And now I've had to cut it again, and I probably will go off blood pressure medication. I'm curious if there's any research on cholesterol, because that was an issue as well, and it's coming down. And I live healthy, but I'm just curious if that has had an effect as well. Otherwise, it's my matcha tea and rooibos tea, so I'm not sure. But so anyway, I'd love to know if there's literature on lipids and inspire therapy. But I would say with sleep apnea nighttime, you're drowsy. You're not really thinking clearly. I wish I had brought the remote because I often turn it off when I mean to pause it. And I think that if the pause button was a lot different from the other buttons, that would help quite a bit. I've also changed my level by accident in the middle of the night. One night it was a 4 and it should have been a 2. So yeah, so any way that they could change that remote to make the buttons very different from each other, probably feel, because we're keeping the lights low so that we have good sleep hygiene. So that's the only thing I would change.
And Austin, what would you tell scientists?
Yeah, I mean, Woody hit on a ton, and I think all of us up here, would say that we're eternally grateful that you guys decided to get into a field like this to benefit, people in conditions like ours, and to keep pushing. I know in like my study, since this is a very early, research project with the whole BCI and the brain to the arm, you have to be plugged in, and the moment that plug stops, it's back to, the old way of life. And unfortunately, that's tough. But, as my researchers have told me, the plan is to have, like a backpack that would be the computer during the processing. And the idea would be that the connectors on top of my head wouldn't have to be cabled, but would be wireless. And thus somebody in a situation like this could be portable. And I think that's, what, my lab, but also, I think like the challenge of pushing it and everyone, hopefully improving upon the systems that, are currently here, so that, like I said, that goal or that desire of something that I have to be portable can really, be a reality and really make the impact on so many more quadriplegics out there. And so, yeah, just keep pushing. Hopefully, things improve at a steady pace. And like I said, accidents like mine or like Woody's or all that aren't as common, and people have much more mobility back in the future.
Thank you for that very clear goal. How about you, Hanan? Any goals you would impart upon us?
Well, I don't think I can thank any researcher enough for doing what you guys do, because like I said, it takes an injury like this to really comprehend the magnitude of what you do and how important it is. But I feel like spoiled to ask questions or ask for any more than what I already have. But I call the engineer I work with my personal magician because he really is amazing. And for me personally, if I can have one thing, would be to make my implant waterproof, to be able to get in the water, because aquatic therapy is so beneficial for people with spinal cord injury, especially with spasms. And I'm lucky I don't have that many spasms or that much I don't have problems with spasms, but I just love water. I love the sun. I just wish I could get in the water and I don't have to worry about this implant or make it wireless somehow. Those are the things that would be so awesome, but I'll take what I have and not complain for now, as long as I can have them keep working. with me. That's all I can care.
Well, these are the really, practical challenges that you're highlighting. Adam mentioned water as well. So, Adam, what about you? What sort of goals would you impart on us?
Yeah, I think, so what I'm about to say, I think will kind of expand upon what Woody and Haneen just kind of touched on. I really think from day one, if you're a researcher and engineer, whatever, you really need to, from the second you create these devices, you really need to approach it from like a consumer standpoint, like an experience, like what experience are you trying to create for the person, It's not just regaining function. I mean, that's great, but unfortunately, if you don't make the experience, if it's not a great experience, these devices have to be, whether we like it or not, have to be profitable, right? If they're not making money for a company, they're going to go away. Like what happened, what I said before with this Vocare. They're a very tiny company, bunch of staff gets turned over. I'm constantly like in fear that they're going to go out of business. This device is going to go away. So I think, as I was saying, my thing, my advice is, from day one, you have to, really put the user experience first. And you kind of have to do that, with the FDA. So I'm actually creating my own medical device company as I speak. So I'm not just talking out of hand. I'm creating an exoskeleton. It's long story short, but I'm seeing like how from day one you have to because the FDA, you have to every little change you make, you have to go through the FDA, and you really have to put from day one you have to put the user experience first. It's great that it just does a function, it regains, but it's if nobody's going to use the device, it is, who cares, So yeah, that's my thing, is put the user experience first and put your business hat on as well. Don't just be a researcher. Unfortunately, you can't do that. So yeah, I guess that'd be my two things.
All right, thank you so much, panel. So we're going to open it up for questions. And if there's a portable mic, we could pass over. I'm going to pass mine to you. How about that? All right, here. If you just introduce yourself and go ahead and with your question.
Sure. My name is Mike Halley, and I wanted to thank all of you for sharing this with us. Thank you to you and for your care teams. You're in many ways pioneers, but the things that you have talked about and what you're doing, I was just really struck by the humanity of it, talking about independence, the feel of touch, the feel of companionship, the restoration of ability to do things in a house with a companion. Those are all things that are really what makes us human and what provides us with dignity. And the way that you're framing them really brings back the lessons that technology can enable. And it really is a very strong motivator, because it's the reason that the people who are doing this with you value this so much. And people should really know about it more. And I really appreciate that you're able to talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. My name is Ian Baumgart. I echo kind of the same sentiments. Thank you all for sharing. I really like to hear about your guys' experience. My question is about, and a few of you touched on it, about your care teams, whether that's healthcare or partners or, researchers, et cetera. how has I guess the care team like helped you use your device better as you after your implant and as you learn to incorporate it in your life? Has anything kind of stood out where you use your device in a way that you wouldn't expect by working with these teams, or be able to use the device better?
Well, for me personally, they've been, so in order to activate the device, I have to literally turn it on and off by touching the buttons and turn it on by touching the buttons. So we've worked on a way to turn it on just by a hand movement, and it will turn itself on. So in case my hands are busy and it turns itself off, I can do that. And they're always trying to find ways that they do ask me, but I don't know what, I can't imagine. I'm just so grateful for this that I can't imagine what else they can do. I feel like I'm asking too much. But yeah, they're the ones that are really trying hard to find ways to make it much better for me. So, but that's one of the ways they've been trying. That's one thing they did recently.
So I think they probably learned from seeing how you
Yeah,
use it, want to use it. Any other examples from our panel about this sort of interface interaction?
I did touch on it already, but like I met with my research team. I was up for 3 days recently, and they're very, very good at asking for feedback about how well my grasp patterns are working for me, and listening to what I'm struggling with, what is working, what isn't working. And then working through what changes can be made to the programming to improve it and make those grasp patterns work better for me. And then also on the technology side, they're working on making the equipment more streamlined in terms of like the phone application that I have to have a specific phone. I know they're working on some different technologies to make it more practical to use. So they're definitely working on improving the usefulness and the ease of use of my system.
One more thing I can add. We did rowing. So my box has this, so I can turn my quads on and it will activate it. But like I said, originally when I went to the gym where the veteran that introduced me to the FES lab, so I was going to that gym for like 7 years, but it was all people who are paralyzed. So it was really relaxed and you get on the machine whenever you want to. And it was just really more than the hanging out spot and working out. But I really thought I was working out. But then when we started rowing at the lab, I really noticed how I wasted the past 7 years thinking that I was working out, because the rowing workout was an amazing workout. And it took, I believe it was 38 sessions. The first session, I could only do it for 2 minutes. And after 38 sessions, I was able to do it for an hour. And it was really, really, really amazing. So that's one of the things that we recently did. And Mike was involved in the VR to get it more better and better. So that's one of the goals that we're aiming for recently.
Make you sweat. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much for coming today. So it seems that for nearly all of your devices, there's still a manual interaction where you need to turn it on or off or change parameters. And I know a lot of researchers in our field are using like artificial intelligence and machine learning and those like scary words to try to like get rid of the manual component where your device can kind of use your habits to predict and then do it for you. And I'm curious, do you like that path that we're going down where you wouldn't need to interact with it? Or do you think that would improve your day-to-day life a lot? Or perhaps do you have some concerns about that? And maybe you like having complete control over the device?
So for me personally, I'm a control freak. So I like the idea of being able to turn it on and off, because I don't know whether something using AI what if it malfunctions? What if I'm driving and then I'm not connected to my device? Or what if I'm holding a hot pot from the stove and then it disconnects? So those are the thoughts but you just have fear because you meet people that had injuries and how it puts them back so far backwards. I think that's the main concern for me personally. Other than that, if it's guaranteed, I think I would be totally okay with it. But until then, I'll stick to this one.
I do wonder with the Inspire, I was talking to a researcher at my table, that I'm pausing it, I think, way too much at night, like 4 to 5 times. And I'm wondering if it's because I'm in a lighter sleep, and so I'm starting to feel it. So it would be kind of cool if it could detect that I'm coming out of a deeper sleep and could ease up in some way. That might be useful.
I would definitely be interested in any kind of technology that would reduce my reliance on using an external device to control. That's one of the negative impacts that I already spoke to about having to do the extra steps. Like when I'm using my device, I have to make sure my implant is turned on. But then I have to go to my phone, open it up, select the grasp pattern, and then do what I'm doing. And then if you think about how you function in daily life, you don't use just one grasp pattern to accomplish tasks. So, then, I accomplish my initial task, but now I need a different grasp pattern to do something else. It would be nice to have the technology be there to not have to go to that device now, turn off, stop the pattern that I'm using currently, and now select a different one, use it, accomplish the task, and now my hand is being stimulated in the resting, what's like the starting pattern, or the grasp pattern that I've selected. Now when I'm done, I have to go back to my device and tell it to stop, so that my hand isn't being stimulated in whatever the initial pattern is. So yeah, I mean, definitely any technology would reduce my reliance on having to go to, the device for those, to switch functions. That would definitely make it more streamlined, make it operate more naturally for me. I think I would enjoy that. I have concerns about technology though, like when we all know it's great when it works, but what happens when it doesn't?
But I'm willing to participate to as many sessions for anything though. That doesn't take away from being a participant for whatever they need me to do, or use me for whatever. I will never say no, because why not? I'm open to that.
So I really appreciate the questions, really appreciate the panelists. We want to give them a chance to eat, and they're going to stay around and talk to you. So please continue to ask your questions, but can we just really thank each and every one of them